Auburn went into this tournament as the number one overall seed. They're still dancing. They're going to San Antonio in the Final Four. Problem is, they're the number one overall seed in this tournament. How are you the betting underdog, the least likely to win a national championship? The committee said you were number one overall.
Yeah, but when you look at when people filled out their brackets, not that that matters, and we talked about that. Everybody had Florida, everybody had Duke. Auburn had lost 3 or 4. Now everybody's talking about this team's got their mojo back. Something flipped in that Michigan game. They were getting dominated on the boards. They weren't hitting their shots. And then once that switch kind of flicked, this looks like the dominant Auburn team we saw earlier this season.
It does. You mentioned the betting favorites. It's funny. Going into the tournament, I think Florida was probably the majority opinion of the best team in the nation at that point. Regardless of draw and you got to go to San Francisco or not, I think everybody would have said, not everybody, a lot of people said Florida was the best team in the nation. But then, it's just the reason it's so difficult to win a national championship. It's hard to keep that up. And nobody has dominated through this tournament the way Duke has. I keep waiting for Duke to be tested, and nobody can test Duke.
Yeah.
Like the closest game they have had basically in 2 months was Arizona the other night. Well, I take that back. They were in the ACC tournament, that game where Flag got hurt. But yeah. Meaningful game was the other night against Arizona when they were up 20, and Arizona climbed back in to make it look like a game.
And I know we'll get into Duke and Alabama here in a little bit, but, this Duke defense, what they did to Alabama's offense, I don't think anybody expected Alabama to go out and pop 25 threes again, but to hold Alabama to 65 points and only the second time they've been held under 70 the entire season, that shows you how good Duke – they've got – 6 guys that will be drafted in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Four first rounders.
Yeah, not only are they incredibly offensively, but what they do defensively, man. And there's a reason as dominant as Houston has been too. And watching that game yesterday, and I know Tennessee cut it to 10 with 5 and change left, but that was a beatdown. They're a 4.5-point favorite over Houston.
That's right. And it's all 1 seeds. Only the second time. We started seeding the tournament. If you don't know the history, it wasn't always seeded. 1979 was the first time we seeded the tournament to have a number 1 seed, so on. It's only the second time that all 4 of them have made it to the Final Four. The other was 2008, ironically, in the Alamo Dome where this one will be played. And these are, you're talking about defenses and offenses and efficiencies. Both of these, all 4 of these teams are top 10 in both categories. Duke's the only one that's in top 5 in both categories. But these are all, by all the metrics, the 4 best teams in the country, and they are the last 4 standing. And they've been pretty much the 4 best teams all season long.
Well, and this is one of those situations, Brown, I believe, and we'll get to our bracket challenge. I kicked myself in the ass because I said it early on. This, I think, could be the year, first time since 2008, where all 1s are in it.
Then you went with Clemson, a 5.
Yeah, then I went with Clemson, which makes absolutely no sense. But I think going into this weekend, legitimately any of these teams can win it. Nobody's going to be surprised. You go back to last year, it was a great story, Alabama getting to their first Final Four. Nobody believed they were going to win it. 2 years ago, nobody thought Florida Atlantic or San Diego State was going to win it. This year, all 4 are really, really good elite teams, and there's a path, obviously, for these teams to win 2 games and win a national championship.
But it's funny because we talk all year about all these analytics, right? And we compare all these teams, and there's that Ken Pom stat that's been true every single year since 2002, and it will be again, that you've got to be a top 40 offense, top 25 defense to win a national championship. Everyone since 2002 has been that. And you watch all year and you start talking to yourself into these other teams like, yeah, I know they don't meet that criteria, but. And then you see them go up against teams that are good in those criteria, and you're like, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know if you remember, but right before the tournament, I gave you the statistics on 1 seeds that have won it and 2 seeds that have won it. And there's a vast difference. And you're like, it can't make that much difference. And then you see 2s go up against 1s, and you're like, okay, that's why that stat is there, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens with Duke, Alabama, and Houston, Tennessee. You're like, okay, that stat obviously matters.
Yeah, Duke was they're just physically bigger than Alabama was. And
they're a better team.
They were just a better team. Last night was the only NCAA tournament game I've seen from my house this year. So I'm sitting there watching. It's the only one I've had full sound up, no music playing in the background, no crowd noise, anything.
Nobody taking your order.
Yeah, it's just so I was able to watch it and hear it. and was dialed in on every basket of it. And when Broome came down awkwardly, it was like a car accident. I was like, it could be his left ankle, it could be his left knee, it could be a hip dislocation, it could be his right knee, it could be a wrist, it could be an elbow. When he fell down, I mean, there was so much awkwardness in that fall, and it was amazing to me that he was able to walk to the locker room. But I think I saw him. Did he not say, "I'm done"?
That's what it looked like.
Yeah, he said, "I'm done."
Yeah.
I'm
But I
done.
thought it was the hyperextension of the elbow.
Yeah, I mean, it
was,
But
but
you
yeah.
see, well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
When
no,
he
no,
was
no.
landing, I mean, the leg was here.
In live action, I saw the leg hyperextend, and
Yeah.
I know he's already got leg issues, and I'm like, oh gosh, that's why. But then, as soon as I cut to him, he's holding his elbow. I was like,
Yeah.
what did he do to his elbow?
Yeah,
It wasn't until the replay that I saw his elbow.
You saw the replay and you're like, man, that was awkward. That could be bad. And then when
Yeah.
he said, "I'm done," then you're like, damn, he heard something pop. It's
Yeah.
definitely not feeling right. We've got way too many Willis Reed references, though. I got
Yeah.
one in the elevator coming up today.
Well, no, hey,
Yeah,
you know,
way too many Willis
at
Reed.
least a new generation has learned who Willis Reed is.
that's
true.
I mean, that was 1970.
But he had a
Surely-
torn muscle off the bone, had missed 6 games, came back for game 7.
I'm
a
so
little bit
old, I
different.
don't even know that story. I just know he went to the locker room,
Yeah.
came back. I didn't know what the
I've
injury
seen the
was.
video of him walking out. Don't they
Yeah.
win by 20 or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah. Like he played a little bit. He wasn't a
Yeah.
factor, but it was more the motivation for the crowd, the teammates.
Right.
Like I didn't think when Broome, and they're showing it right now with 440, he hits the 3. I didn't think he needed to come back in because Michigan State, and I give Auburn a lot of credit, Michigan State. And this is one of the reasons I had Auburn in the Final Four, like tough region with some potential matchups, but I thought they had the most beneficial 2. I never really believed in Michigan State.
I thought Michigan State was an issue for them because of the way Michigan State rebounds, and those are the teams that have beaten Auburn, and they were 13th in the country rebounding. But for Broome to have a double-double in the first half, 11 rebounds just showed you, I mean, they were not going to be intimidated on the boards, obviously.
By the way, Broome now tied with Shaquille O'Neal for most double-doubles in the NCAA tournament history.
That is insane. Broome going back to the Michigan game, which, there was a moment, I think a lot of people believed, damn. And that was one of the reasons in this region. I was like, Michigan is red hot, and they are seated so low as a 5. But I thought Broome, although he went 22-16, I thought he played one of his worst games. I know that sounds crazy.
Against Michigan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went 22-16 in that game?
I know.
Yeah.
It's a little surprising.
But I
isn't it,
mean,
when
he
you
was
watch that
turning
game?
the basketball over, sloppy handle. I just thought he was out of sync, but still had 22-16.
Yeah.
It was still a major factor. That shows you how good Broome is.
Yeah, when they were down 9 with whatever to go in the game, 12 minutes, whatever it was left in the game, and they went on that 18-2 run, 20-2 run against Michigan, because we haven't had a show since then either. But that's to me when they got their mojo.
Oh,
back.
yeah. And then
they were in trouble.
And then the 17-0 run yesterday. After that, and you're right, I mean, it ended up being a 6-point game, but they had them at 10 the entire game.
Yeah.
It was one of the most boring games. If you're an Auburn fan, you loved it.
Oh, yeah.
You could hear it coming through the TV again. I got a text from a buddy. Is it as loud on your couch as it is here? It sounds like it.
Yeah, it sounded like they were playing at Neville Arena, both those games. And I was told, or I saw, there were more Michigan State fans there than Michigan, for that round, but it still sounded like Neville Arena.
Yeah.
But I will say, as boring as Auburn kept them at arm's length the whole time, but when you got Chad Baker-Mazara on the bench getting his wrist attended to, and then Broome goes to the locker room, and even like hugging and having the moment with his parents, and then them going to the locker room with him was Tracy Wolfson's report. That's when you think it's really bad.
Oh, yeah.
When mom and dad don't go back up to the seats, they go to the locker room. That's when you start to get worried.
Yeah, because you feel like they've been told something.
Yeah,
Like, this is really significant.
And he whispers in their ear, and you could tell mom's emotional. And then Tracy Wolfson's like his parents are back in the locker room with him. I'm like, oh gosh. I mean, even if they win this, he's not going to play in the Final Four.
And then he comes out.
And then he comes out,
but
an arm hanging.
straight to the coach.
I can't wait to see what the crowd breakdown is going to be in San Antonio because, now Houston doesn't have to leave the state. I don't know what their following's like.
Me either. But
Well, they've played a bunch of road games, it feels like.
Man,
we know Duke travels.
Yeah.
Duke travels.
Auburn
Obviously,
travels.
Auburn is going to travel. Florida travels. They haven't been to a Final Four since 14.
Yeah, I think Florida will have the smallest fan base.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I do. I think Florida will be the smallest. I think Houston, even though it's in-state, will be next. Then Auburn, then Duke. And I know Duke's a small school.
It is small.
And maybe I'm just coming from Newark where it's Duke Central up there. But
So was majority Duke in Newark?
are you kidding me?
Oh, it sounded
you
that was
kidding me?
another one that sounded like.
Yeah.
But I could
well,
also see that you've got a lot of, growing up in our generations, well, generations for Duke that you got a lot of bandwagon in New York City. That,
you
they didn't know anything about St. John's,
But a lot of Jersey kids go to Duke for
I didn't
some
know
reason.
that, but
yeah. That's an old joke, and I can't remember where I heard it or read it or whatever that, like if you encounter a Duke student, you say, what exit? That's the old New Jersey joke. I grew up in New Jersey, what exit? And, I went to Duke. What exit did you grow up? So there are a lot of Jersey kids that go to Duke for some reason. I have no idea. I really don't. Maybe there are a lot of Methodists in Jersey.
I don't know, but it was insanity for Duke. So I think Duke will have maybe Auburn. Auburn may have more people there than anybody.
Well, I think it's a little bit different than 18. When you went to your first Final Four,
19, I think.
19, 18-19 season. Going to your first Final Four, much like Alabama last year, I don't think there was an expectation, you can win it, but are we really going to win this?
Right.
Like, now that Auburn does have that swagger back, I think most Auburn fans believe, hey, we're going to win this. We're going to beat Florida in the rematch. We're going to beat Duke in the rematch if they do get Duke. And look, they've beaten Houston in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's it. They've played every one of these teams. They're 1-2 against them. But as we were talking on the basketball show last night afterwards, I sort of would want to be the team that lost the first meeting in this situation. You're good enough to beat them.
I wonder who Duke wants. If Duke is that team again, man, Houston is incredible. So I know Houston is 30-1 since starting the season 3-2.
Yeah, I would say Duke wants Auburn, but they better be careful wanting Auburn. Only because of Walter Clayton Jr.
Well, yeah, Walter Clayton Jr. Like, if you're drafting right now, I think most people, as good as Broome is, as good as Flagg is, if you can have one guy in this mini tournament that we've got in San Antonio, that's probably the guy most people would defer to.
I think he's the one that would scare you, like, okay, even if we guard him, I don't know, he probably will get his.
Yeah, it's pretty clear who your most outstanding player is if 3 teams win this. It's going to be Clayton Broome or Flagg. I don't know where they would go with Houston.
Houston,
probably Cryer.
It could be Sharp though.
Yeah, there's a couple options there.
Some of the shots he made down the stretch.
But it's abundantly clear with Florida, Auburn, and Duke who your most outstanding player of the tournament will be.
I guess the question to John Shire and who Duke would want is how healthy is Johni Broome?
Again, that was the point where you thought if Michigan State's going to win this thing, it'll be right here, because you got Cardwell, who can't make free throws. So if he gets the ball, you just foul him, right? And you take chances there.
You would think that they don't, but
they don't. But you would think you would do the guy. He's like a 30% shooter.
Bruce does a pretty good job on subbing in.
Well, he does, but with Broome out, you can't sub in. Now that's my point.
Yeah.
Is you'd have Cardwell stuck in there. With Broome's in the locker room.
Yeah, but when he goes to the locker room and Chaney Johnson comes in, that's where he had his spurt offensively. Chaney Johnson, I think, scored 6 while Broome was back there, 3 buckets, and Dillon was playing the defense the whole game long. But the gap, to your point, Brown, the gap didn't change.
Nope.
Like if it was 10, it was 10.
That's right.
When he came back out, if it was 9, whatever it was, but it stayed that big distance even when Broome was back in the locker room. And that's a credit, I think, to Auburn's defense, man.
No, I agree completely. Michigan State couldn't get good looks, and when they did, they couldn't get them to go down. It wasn't Houston level on Tennessee, but Michigan State was pretty out of sort.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll stick by this, but back when Broome got hurt earlier this year, I was like, I still think Auburn could be a Final Four team without Broome. I don't think they could win a national championship. So I wasn't shocked. It was does everything get deflated if the word starts to get out that Broome is done? Then your teammates start to hear this. Michigan State goes on a little run. Michigan State's offense is just awful.
Yeah.
Those guys cannot buy a shot.
Especially against that Auburn defense.
But do you, now that they've gotten to the Final Four, I think anybody that gets to a Final Four is a successful season.
I agree.
I've said this a couple of times now because I said this on Friday's show too, but I'll say it again here. I listened to Coach K, his podcast, I think it was when I was stuck in the airport in Chicago. And he said, and this is Coach K, he said there's a bridge, Elite Eight to the Final Four. You can have a good season, successful season, making it to the Elite Eight. But there's a bridge. You cross that bridge into the promised land, which is the Final Four. And even North Carolina and Duke, who've got 21 Final Fours and 18 Final Fours, they hang banners for Final Fours just getting there.
You get a trophy. You get a trophy to get there, yeah.
You're regional champs. And getting to the Final Four is the promised land. And then whatever happens after you get there, there's obviously more meat on the bone. There's a prize out there. But crossing that bridge, as Coach K describes it, from the Elite Eight to the Final Four is the destination. Now it's whatever happens once you get there, but the Final Four season is the jewel in college basketball.
Once out of every 3-4 years, you'll have a team like UConn last year. Anything less than a national championship would have been a disappointment. But I think, if you're Duke, Shire's first, bright future there, obviously. But Cooper Flagg, you're only going to get him from 1 year. For Auburn, Houston, it seems like Kelvin Sampson's always creeping around. We thought early on, hey, they're just missing a little something.
Yep.
They actually weren't. Sasser was a big deal last year, but wasn't the big deal that we thought he was going to be.
He's fixed his offense, though, Kelvin Sampson.
He has.
Rick Barnes has not, and it showed yesterday, but Kelvin Sampson's fixed that offense.
Much like Shire, Todd Golden. I think if you're a Florida fan, you're very optimistic.
My gosh, are you?
If you're Auburn, though, you had this incredible transfer in Johni Broome. This is it for him. Bruce Pearl, could this be it for Bruce Pearl? So, it's not going to be, it'll be a disappointment, but it's still a great season. But if you're an Auburn fan, you like, how many more opportunities are we going to get?
You never know how many opportunities you get. It's why Miles Kelly left his old school, Georgia Tech, to come to Auburn. Taylor talked to him about that in the post-game locker room after the win last night.
I mean, it means everything to me. I mean, I came to Auburn to do stuff like this, make it to the Final Four, and that's something that BP and Steven really believed in me and believed in my talents for me to come in and do and be a part of something special. And that was the biggest thing for me coming into this. And they do a great job of coaching us hard and motivating us and to come into these games. And that was the epitome of this game.
And I will say this. I think Miles Kelly didn't have the best two games in the 16 and the 8. There's a wild card hanging out there that could be another – a little spurtability, if you will, as we always like to say this time of year, to sort of take you to another level if he gets hot in the Alamo Dome. If it has a shooting background like Rupp Arena, look out.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're right. I mean, Miles is a guy that's got a ton of experience. The last couple of games haven't been great, 3 of 10 yesterday. Pettiford has gotten so good.
Boy, has he. The brighter the lights get, the better he is, I think. In that Michigan game, he was the difference.
Yeah.
He's a projected first-round NBA draft pick if he chooses to do that.
Yeah, look, projections are all over the place. But if I was an NBA guy, when you start to look at, I'd take him over Sears.
Oh, that's not even a discussion.
Not even,
just because of the physical build.
Well, look, first of all, I think Alabama's only going to get one guy drafted. And I don't even know, and I don't know if we're going to get to that in a little bit, what the roster is going to look like moving forward.
No, it's a changeover.
But I do think Alabama's only got one potential guy to get drafted. I still don't know if Broome's going to get drafted. But if Pettiford was to come out 100%, and if I was an NBA franchise, would definitely take a flyer on this guy in the late first.
Yeah.
Because, he's got, I don't want to say Iverson. The build is kind of like that. Steve Francis, I don't know, man. He is so freaking good.
James Harden is the comparison I read.
Yeah, no, Harden was so good, like, as far as, like, rebounding. Harden had size. Pettiford doesn't have size.
What is Pettiford's size?
6'1"?
I think he's 6'1". I think he and Phylon are about the same size, aren't they?
No, he's maybe 6'1".
Maybe 6'1". Yeah. So he's on the limit.
He's on the low end of NBA.
Yeah, and that's why I say Iverson just with the build. But like, I don't doubt the guy at all. I think he's going to be a tremendous player.
Yeah. And as good as distributing the basketball as he is now that he's drawing attention as a scorer, that one pass, that quick pass, I forget who gave it to him, and he was going up and he dished it to Dillon right there at the bucket. Great eyes, and I agree with you on Pettiford. He's a star.